There's no logical group. No. I mean, to the extent that there's any regulation of the philanthropic sector, it's completely self-imposed. I mean, the Attorney General of a state can take action against a foundation for criminal misbehavior or violation of the terms of the instrument and so forth. It almost never happens. I think, relate to you, counting on the fingers of one hand, how many instances of that kind there have been. Very few. So, and there is no government, and there's no effective private regulation either. I think the underlying problem is a much bigger one. The underlying problem is the peculiar nature of the United States as a 21st century democracy operating with 18th century principles of political economy. When people look at a phenomenon like the Tea Party and they say, who are these weirdos? What are they talking about? Well, of course, what they're talking about is the underlying principles of the United States at the time the nation was formed. They got that right. They haven't noticed that we're in the 21st century, but they do have the 18th century right. And a lot of our attitudes go back to that. And the principal one is a deep mistrust of the state and a deep commitment to the notion that if we're to have government, that government is best not only which governs least, but which is geographically most proximate to the people. So it's local government, or at most state government, using the American sense of state, that we ought to favor. And what we are most mistrustful of, and what it took us the longest time to create, is a national government, a federal government. And that's what we see in national politics in 2013, although I think it's, for most people, poorly understood historically. And philanthropy is a part of that, because our commitment from the start was to the notion that the federal government has only limited functions. It needs very little money. The federal government was raising something like $300,000 annually in 1861 at the verge of the outbreak of the Civil War. We didn't need money because the government wasn't doing anything. It raised it all from excise taxes. We didn't have an income tax nationally, federally, until the early 20th century. And we didn't believe, perhaps we still don't believe, that there is an entitlement to welfare in this country. That is the responsibility of individuals or, failing that, of local communities. And it's also the responsibility of the charitable sector. There's a deep American commitment to that belief. And that's why, in the 30s, at the time of the New Deal, there was such deeply embedded opposition to Roosevelt's notions, even though the New Deal was, by European standards, a pretty mild piece of welfare legislation. The Great Society, Lyndon Johnson, went a lot further. But we're still pushing back against all of that, and look what happened after the Great Society. We got what I would call the reaction of the Reagan years, which is extended until now, really. So that even when you look at the most recent piece of social welfare legislation, the Obamacare legislation, the Affordable Health Care Act, that is by the standards, again, of any European country in 2013, impossible even to understand. Why should private insurance be the way we deal with national health care? So we live in a internationally weird environment, and one of the ways we've dealt with that is through philanthropy, through charity, through private investment for the public good, and that's what philanthropy is. But having said that, we have also had such a high regard for the privilege, for the self-determining notion of the individual, that we don't want to tell even very wealthy people how they should be good. And I think that's the problem. And that's why I think, at least in the foreseeable future, I can't imagine having the kind of regulation of these organizations that would be effective. You know, why look a gifted billionaire in the mouth?